Hello and welcome to PowerDrift. This is the comparo that you guys have been waiting for. We finally got our hands on the Yezdi adventure. Obviously, the Royal Enfield Himalayan's been a long-termer for the past 1 year, so it's been there forever. Shumi's cracked a lot of forever jokes in a previous Yezdi video. If you haven't seen that, please go ahead and check it out.
Your intro is going on forever. Can we get on with it?
Another one. Anyway, here are the two motorcycles. There are a lot of aspects that we're going to discuss, Shumi and I. We'll start off with the first one. Quickly going to take a look at my phone. Obviously, the first point is going to be engine. Shumi, first question is, which motorcycle do you think has a better engine?
Neither.
+1.
Okay, let me explain that. The Royal Enfield engine is the oldest engine here.
Yeah.
And as of today, given the fact that the Interceptor is out there, the Classic 350 and the Meteor 350 are out there, this is the worst engine that Royal Enfield makes in their lineup. It's not a bad engine, but this is the poorest engine that they make. Okay. Now the Yezdi benchmarks that engine. And to me, that's where the trouble begins, because I think Yezdi had the opportunity to really raise the game, but it's a benchmark game. So what Yezdi has gotten 100% right is the power output. What he said from the beginning is that needs 5 bhp more.
You've got it
5 bhp more. But this engine is clearly designed for torque. So torque is at what, 4000 rpm peak torque?
4.5,
by 6000 rpm, I think the engine is completely done. And in that sense, it fits into the Royal Enfield family. It's a low revving engine. It produces a lot of torque. The Yezdi is definitely the quicker of the two motorcycles. It will overtake things at a faster pace than both the motorcycles. But for example, at 100 kmph on a highway cruise, they feel roughly about the same. The Himalayan might feel a little bit smoother because the revs are lower.
Correct.
The Yezdi is not vibrating, but it's got a noisier engine. When you want to overtake though, remember this thing is a torquey engine.
So you just get on the gas,
go.
You'll go.
With that, you might have to make 1 or 2 gear changes to get past, to achieve the same acceleration. What do you think?
When you move things to the city, I think, like you said, this is the more powerful engine and this has got a very short rev band, and all you need to do is just get on the throttle. So when you're riding both these motorcycles in the city, this just requires a lot less effort than the Yezdi Adventure. I mean, just because the way it's geared, it harps on a lot of performance. All this needs to do is just get on the gas and you're going to live very, very peacefully in the city.
The other thing that I want to add here, sorry to interrupt you, is that because it is torque and then nothing, and that is a relatively linear power band. If you're riding peacefully, this might feel better. But if you're trying to hustle, the Yezdi is more even. I think Yezdi had the opportunity, which they squandered a little bit, of making that engine have a little bit more character by choosing whether it wanted to be a top-end motorcycle, a mid-range motorcycle, or a bottom-end. Linear power curves are nice, but on an adventure, I do suspect that a stronger bottom-end would have helped this motorcycle.
Yeah, I mean, technically, when you see, since this is a very old motor and it's almost nearing the end of its life, this probably vibrates more when you're at higher revs. When you're maybe at higher speeds. This is noisy at higher speeds, not as vibey as the Himalayan. But this just makes a lot of noise.
But that aside, you've got a much larger service network.
Much
larger sales network. You tell me which you think is the more comfortable motorcycle of the two.
I think in terms of comfort, the Himalayan has got a slightly plusher setup when it comes to suspension.
It does.
I don't know why Yezdi chose to go with a slightly firmer setup. It's not probably as bad as the Scrambler that you rode recently. The Scrambler's, the Scrambler's suspension is pretty stiff. This is also slightly on the firmer side. So while this might be firm, it's actually a really nice motorcycle to ride.
So when you hit a really large pothole, the Himalayan sort of gathers it up. You'll hear a noise, but you won't really get your bars shaken and stuff. And the Yezdi will do that. Like the Scrambler to me is like, I can't figure out why it's so stiff. I don't think that is the issue here. It's a matter of degrees. If you're happier with that ride quality, I'm totally okay with that. So in high-speed cornering, 21-inch wheels and these Seat tires, which aren't honestly the greatest, the grippiest tires of all. So if you put the 2 and 2 together, neither of these are great cornering machines. Like most 21-inch front wheel motorcycles do, they lean a lot more than they turn, as it they don't change direction that fast. But the Yezdi feels more direct and more connected because I think the suspension is stiffer.
Also, I mean, it's a great thing because both of them get 21-inch front wheels. Exactly the same setup.
We like to tell you to test ride and decide. And in this case, on the ride quality and handling front, they are very, very close to each other.
Yeah.
They have the exact same wheelbase. They have the more or less exactly the same wheel and tire setup.
Yeah.
The weight is only 10 kilos different.
About 10, 11 kilos.
Yeah. So ride both and see which one you like better.
100%.
A few of you who prefer comfort and a plush, almost wallowy kind of setup. It doesn't wallow, but that kind of setup, you'll gravitate towards this motorcycle. Those of you who like sportier motorcycles,
little more,
you would probably gravitate towards the adventure.
Yeah.
And there's pros to both kinds of setups.
Yeah.
I think off-road.
Yeah, that's what the next question was. I mean, both these motorcycles are essentially adventure motorcycles, and 90% of your riding is going to happen in the city on the highway. But for the 10% that often encounter bad roads, broken roads, which one do you think is going to handle better off-road?
Okay, so for a new rider, I think the Himalayan's greatest asset is that it feels like a simple motorcycle to ride.
Very simple.
It gives you instant confidence.
Yeah.
You don't really have to worry about the gearbox because there's so much torque, and you can just carry on with your life.
Yeah.
And the biggest, I think, difference between the two off-road is that when you stand up, the Himalayan is between your knees, but the Adventure's tank is actually not good for your knees. Your contact point is somewhere.
Yeah.
It's about the top of your calf.
Correct.
It's not as secure a holding position, so it takes a while to work out how to ride the Yezdi and feel securely connected when you're standing up.
Correct.
But that aside, they are similar. The Yezdi's handlebar is a little bit wider than the Himalayan.
Correct.
So the extra leverage does make it feel like the steering is a little
easier.
bit simpler.
Yeah.
But if you're a fast rider and you've got skills, I don't think either of these motorcycles will bug you too much.
Also, yeah, when you look at the resume of an AD Vessel, when he spoke about bottom and top, this just feels a lot more fun to ride. Because the moment...
Yes, and I think you'll do a lot more stuff in, for example, second gear on this motorcycle, that you'll be down to first on that.
Absolutely. So this just feels a lot more fun to ride when you get on the gas, rear stepping out and all that drama. This just feels a lot more confident. Also, when you look at the seat height, this is not as tall. I mean, it's not the tallest seat height, it's still a lot more.
No, it's I think what, 15 mm?
15 mm more. But this just feels like a really nice package that comes together, especially when you go off-road.
And this is a slightly more comfortable motorcycle, and for those who are of short stature, this 800 and 815 is not going to make a difference.
Not going to make a difference.
Get on the bike and see what makes you feel better. This is just a slightly better seat than that.
Slightly better, yeah.
That's it.
And that actually, we would like to sum this up in by bringing in ergonomics as well. Ergonomically, I think both of them are slightly similar.
Yeah.
I mean, this has got maybe raised foot pegs. This has got foot pegs that are slightly lower. The seat height again is lower. This has got slightly higher seat height. Maybe more leverage through the way of handlebars. But it's not like a huge difference. 19-20 is what we were expecting in the term in the field of ergonomics as well. Let's talk about braking units on both these motorcycles.
Yeah.
Now, ADVs generally do not have like a very strong front brake.
They can't. Off-road, you don't want the sharpest brakes because you'll immediately kick the motorcycle into ABS. Both have ABS. Both you can switch off the rear.
Switchable ABS on that, for
Yezdi
sure.
is running 3 calibrations. This thing is running 2. So the third calibration for that is rain mode, where I think the intervention is more earlier and on both wheels.
Intrusive.
But brakes, they more or less do the same job. I would not.
This has got a bigger rotor, by the way.
Yeah, but it does the same job. It doesn't feel like it stops faster than the Himalayan at all.
It does not feel like that. But in terms of feel and bite and all of those things, I think roughly the same. And that brings me to the next aspect of the discussion, and it's to talk about features and instrument cluster. And just to kick things off, when I saw the instrument cluster when the new Himalayan came out, it looked like a hack job. It still looks like a hack job. I mean, some of the things on the Himalayan absolutely do not make any sense. And we were talking about this, the compass, for example. But a simple thing like maybe removing that and getting the tripper in place of that would have still made a lot more sense and would have looked like a neat console in the first place. There's just too much to read out. The tripper also is not properly aligned.
It's never been.
Never been. And
we've always been threatened with a aligned tripper, but we've never seen an aligned tripper yet.
On the Yezdi,
it's not much better, to be honest. Okay, so the Yezdi looks more modern because it's using screens, an LCD screen and a color TFT kind of combination. But the two round displays are set in a really large rectangular bezel. So if I look at it from this angle where I can't actually see the meters, it reminds me of the 250 Adventures.
Correct, yeah.
So when I go to the front and look at it, you realize it's acres of black plastic, which is featureless.
It's empty space, yeah.
It's empty space. The
so
color TFT is in
there.
2 parts, where there's a bar which shows you the Bluetooth and all of those indicators, and then a circle which shows you the navigation. Yezdi could have done a classier set of meters. I think there was an opportunity to do a slightly better job of it.
Absolutely.
And similarly, the tilt function to me is slightly useless because you've got adjustability, and to me, adjustability is always a welcome thing.
Correct.
But if I have to stop operate 2 knobs and move it.
If you're using the motorcycle every day,
Yeah.
I mean, you're not going to constantly fidget and change things.
Yeah, and the logic we were given is that if you're standing up and riding, you can tilt it up, and if you're sitting down and riding, you'll tilt it down. That only works if it's like a movement. If I have to do stuff with it, you're not going to use it. And second, I don't know of any riders who stand up and ride
and look at it
constantly look
exactly
down.
because the angle's too
The whole
awkward.
point of standing up is to look ahead, not to look down. I think qualitatively, visually, it could have been improved.
Yeah.
The tilt function, I don't think it really achieves any great functional benefit.
We're going to talk about accessories. I would like to talk about the Himalayan. I mean, the Himalayan, when it came, the brief was very clear. You make an ADV and then there are things that you apply to an ADV. So you have provision for jerry cans, you have provision for luggage, there's a top rack as well, stuff like that.
Top rack, the racer. Oh, the top rack. Got it. Sorry, my mistake.
Shumi's back anyway. What's with this rack? And the funny thing is, this, and hear me out, and I don't want to mince words, this is a mandatory accessory.
Yeah.
Which means Yezdi will not sell you the motorcycle without this rack on the front.
Yeah, okay. So let's be fair to them. They're not the only manufacturer pulling this stunt. Okay?
Yeah, I mean, there are manufacturers.
Honda, for the longest time, say that you buy the
Reactive.
scooter and then you pay extra for the side stand and the front number plate. And you cannot buy the scooter if you don't pay for those two things. So here's the thing. The difference between the two motorcycles ex-showroom is about 6,000 bucks.
About 5,000.
5,000 bucks.
Yeah.
That frame costs 5,000 bucks. So on paper there is a price difference, but when you go to buy the Adventure, there is no price difference. But then unfortunately the story gets worse because that is a very strong rack. I think it's overly done, honestly.
Yeah.
But forget that, it's not well made. So the welds are ugly, it's not centered on the tank, and if you look carefully, even in the press pictures that Yezdi rolled out,
Yeah.
the left jerry can and the right jerry can aren't aligned because the frame they're mounted on isn't aligned. So the left points more or less forward and the right points to the right.
Completely different.
Full OCD triggered, and even on the center, the back panel that comes around the fuel filler cap. First of all, I don't know why it comes around because there's not a mounting point at the back. There's just a piece of rubber which is already loose on this motorcycle to prevent contact, and then you scrape off the paint. I understand it.
But I don't see a point of contact anywhere.
And it devalues my quality perception of the motorcycle. Just above that is the USB thing, which again is there, but it's so poorly integrated that it looks like an aftermarket kit.
Yeah.
Okay,
That's actually what I asked first. I mean, is this an aftermarket? And people are like, no,
so
it's come
you know
from
the
motorcycle.
difference between a manufacturer doing vehicle integration and you doing vehicle integration in terms of adding accessories is just class.
Correct.
Right? Because if I'm a manufacturer, I can specify a cutout in the plastic into which the ports will go, and then it looks finished.
Correct.
Like it was part of the package. That looks like something happened at the last minute.
Absolutely.
Okay, and since we brought up quality, we might as well finish that. Royal Enfield's first Himalayans weren't high quality motorcycles, but it has come a long way, and this is a very, very nicely finished product now. Again, the welds aren't the cleanest, but the Yezdi's welds are dirtier.
Yeah.
The foot pegs on that motorcycle, the left is a little bit lower than the right, which is
funny, and
you get used to it. But again, I like to say this: humans can get used to anything, and it doesn't mean you should have to. But if you're going to buy an Adventure, you'll get used to it. But the foot pegs aren't at the same height. That's usually a sign of somebody in quality or validation not paying attention.
Correct.
And there's also a couple of small things. It's like if you look at the engine cases, they're really long because your boot is right next to a very hot piece of metal.
Correct.
So this happened to me on the Scrambler also. It happens to you in the Adventure also. This boot will basically eventually end up making contact with the back of the engine case. It's a hot place and eventually you'll feel the heat there. So I would suggest to Yezdi that, but maybe put a small metal brace that your foot goes up against and then it can't go in any further.
Correct. But the question is, out of these two motorcycles, Shumi, which one will you buy?
Oh, you're not going to taunt me about my 390 Duke obsession. If I had 2,20,000 rupees, which is the on-road prices of these two motorcycles, and they're both roughly the same because of that mandatory accessory thing.
Correct.
In the city, most motorcycles are whatever they are. Okay, a commuter is designed to handle that. These motorcycles go through the city pretty decent. On the highway, most of us cruise at 100, 105, and both of these two motorcycles do that also.
Correct.
But so does the Xpulse 200 4V, for example.
Okay.
Now, the Xpulse 2-valve BS6 was better than the previous one, but it wasn't this good. But the new one is. And since I live with a Duke 390, I've lost my fear of cruising at 7,000 RPM. Right? I've tried it, and cruising at 105 on a Xpulse is not uncomfortable anymore. It doesn't vibrate too much, it's not too noisy and all of that.
Correct.
So I would spend what, 1.8 lakh rupees or something.
Roughly.
Put the rally kit on the Xpulse 200. I already know that tall seat is not something that bother me.
Okay.
So if I were buying a motorcycle in this class, I would not buy this end of life Himalayan, although it's a decent motorcycle. Yeah. I would not buy its competitor, the Yezdi Adventure, which also runs this motorcycle very close. I would probably go to a smaller displacement, lighter motorcycle with more off-road capability, similar touring ability, and just get an Xpulse 204V instead.
Yeah.
Okay. If you were to ask me the same question after the 450cc Himalayan comes out, maybe the answer will change.
Sure.
But as of today, this has created the game,
yeah,
and that has not moved the game forward. And I think we can do better.
Part of that game.
I think we can do better. Yes. Here's a gun to your head. What would you buy?
Ah, shit.
Too late. Okay, tell me.
But anyway, between the two motorcycles, whenever there's a new product that's coming in and, you know, trying to eat a piece of a pie that's already been there in the first place, that product should be super phenomenal, and it should be in a space where they do not have to worry about the next 2 to 3 to 4 years.
Yeah.
Like you said, I mean, the Himalayan 450 is probably going to be launched at the end of this year or early 2023, and that's where Yezdi will have to go back to the drawing board and think again on how to make this motorcycle get to a level where the Himalayan 450 is going to be priced at.
Yeah.
But if I were to buy this today between the two motorcycles, when you look at the dealer network, when you kind of look at the power band, the overall experience and how a motorcycle comes together, I quite enjoy that motorcycle. And with the evolution that's happened over the years, I think that right now is a great product. This should have been a phenomenal product, and for me right now, it's not.
So let's bring more people into this. So I'm going to ask you this question, okay? So in summary, that motorcycle is quicker than the Himalayan.
Yes.
It's stiffer sprung, which is poorer ride quality but better handling than the Himalayan.
Correct.
Because of the rack and all of that drama, the price is more or less exactly the same. In terms of service network, much larger network for sales and service both. In terms of reputation, Royal Enfield's problems, pros, cons, solutions, all of that is known. Yeah. This is a relatively new quantity, although the Perak engine has been around.
Perak's been around
Given
for a long time.
all of that data, what would you pick? Since this is a slightly confusing picture, can we give an overall score to the two motorcycles so you are clear about what, how close these two are?
Yeah.
So if I were to rate these two motorcycles
on a scale of 10,
on a scale of 10, I would say that as what could be possible for a 400cc ADV to be, the Royal Enfield is maybe a 7.
Okay.
I think that much ground is left to cover.
Okay.
All right. And if this is a 7, I would say this is a 6. Which is why I'm saying test riding and deciding between these two motorcycles is super critical. Okay, you saw my scrambler story, and I'm more or less said there's a lot of work to be done here.
Yeah,
much better product.
Okay, honestly, I quite like the Himalayan. So for me, I will not get a 7. For me, I think it's slightly higher in that chart. So 8.5 for the Himalayan for me personally. This is going to be maybe a 7.5. It could have been a bloody 9.5 even, but for now, today, 7.5 for the Yezdi Adventure. That pretty much opens up the comment section. Drop in your comments, let us know which is the ADV motorcycle that you will pick. Is it going to be the Yezdi Adventure or is it going to be the Royal Enfield Himalayan? Drop in your comments, let us know. And if you enjoyed this episode, this banter between Shumi and I mean both of us did, then drop us a like, share it with your friends, let them know about this comparo. And yep.
It's either win, lose, draw. It doesn't matter who you think you are. Don't matter when it comes to the crunch, that punch got a